Hello and welcome to the New Indian Express Online. I'm Bansy Kalappa. With me is the EU Ambassador to India, Mr. Herve Delphin. So welcome on the show, Your Excellency. First of all, you're visiting Bengaluru. Can you tell us, throw some light on why you're visiting Bengaluru?
You are a native of Bangalore, and
Yes.
so I'm happy to be on your home turf.
Mm-hmm.
Bangalore is one of the heartbeat of the Indian economic prowess and impressive development. So it's only normal for me as ambassador of the European Union to come here. Bangalore is known to be a hub for information technology, biotechnology. There is so many research and design hubs and labs.
Yes.
That is important for the Europe where we move to the new digital economy to see what is happening here and where we can partner. Many European companies are present, investing in Bangalore. So in the context of increasing the density, the strength of our partnerships, EU-India, it's only normal for me to visit universities, research labs, European companies, and engage with local authorities.
Also, if we look at India, EU, well, there's been a lot of pressure from Indian students to get more accommodation in European countries. So, as a young city, this is a real need in India. So, how do you look at that issue? How do you like to respond to that?
First, I would say that Indian students have done pretty well actually in signing up to European, pan-European programs of exchange. In the past years, altogether, EU member states and EU programs, about 80,000 Indian students came to Europe and studied in Europe. So there are two things. One are programs designed for welcoming Indian students by member states, like France announced not long ago 30,000 Indian students. But we also have pan-European programs like the Erasmus Mundus, and Indian students are also topping the list of foreign students coming to Europe. So I think it's a part of the win-win because the strength of our partnerships, EU-India, is also based on people to people. And having more Indian students in Europe and also having students from Europe coming to India, professors coming to India, European companies to India are key. It's all the little elements, the wires that will connect our two economies.
All right. So when we look at India and Europe, there's been much talk about the free trade agreement, and there have been some kind of talks which have been on formal and informally from about 2 years, or roughly about 18 months, 19 months. So would you like to say something on the FTA, free trade agreement? Where are we? Where do we stand?
First, it's an essential plank in the relationship between the two, the EU and India, and just for a reason. EU has become the main trading partner of India last year, over 130 billion worth of dollars, of even before the US. But much more could be done. We could double, we could triple that figure. And having an FTA is what can unlock the potential of trading between the two parts. But it's a consequential agreement, both for India and Europe. So we have gone through different rounds of negotiation. The 7th round took place last month. It's quite of a high pace in the past years, but it is also one should not be shying away about the difficult issues that are on the table, and that it requires, of course, a negotiation. So we are right in the heart of that negotiation. Of course, now with the elections in India and in Europe, that is not necessarily the most conducive moment to go full throttle on the FTA, but I think both sides, if they show commitment, and that is the case, to get into the core of the issues, I'm quite confident that there will be progress on this FTA.
Okay. When we look at India and Europe, there has been a lot of Trade and Tech Council. Now, can you explain this Trade and Tech Council? Because EU looks at India in very favorable terms as far as trade and tech is concerned.
Yeah, so I think the Trade and Technology Council is quite of a unique setup. The EU only has this with the US and with India.
Okay.
And the purpose is really to, again, unlock and tap the potential of our ecosystems, to bring them closer together. So it's about how we can remove irritants to trade, to facilitate the trade, so market access. But more important, I would say there are elements of enhancing technology transfer, exchanges between Europe and India. For example, we did a MOU on semiconductors last November, which is very important to allow both sides to invest in cooperating in their understanding and the way they can develop AI. AI which is good for all, and it is reliable, trustworthy. And this is, I think, what is. So how we ensure we maximize the opportunities of AI while ensuring guarantees for the citizens. That is, I think, this is a concrete area. The second area, we are about to launch a matchmaking between startups of EU and India on the recycling of EV batteries. And I know that here in Bangalore there are many companies that are investing in EV batteries. So that's another example of concrete cooperation we try to develop, and the TTC is an accelerator of such a cooperation.
And you also have something on textiles, because India is really, textile has been something very important to India. So is there something on textiles also?
Yes. I mean, personally, I'm really fond of Indian textiles. I'm amazed by the quality, by the richness of the patterns and the quality of fabrics which one can find here. And what I'm saying this is because there is a particular genius in handcrafting from Indian manufacturers, often locally produced, but in small units and small scale. And we are now about to allow to and foster through a financial envelope of 9.5 million euro, precisely sustainable and ethical production of textile by a small producers in India. And as I recognize that Karnataka has a tradition of textile, I'm sure that producers from this region will also be benefiting from this instrument. So as you can see, our partnership is broad, from the high tech to the textile to sustainability, allowing people to produce also in rural areas. So development has to go across the board, and I think that's the nature of our partnership with India.
Is there something on the lines of craft production? Does that interest you? Is there talks on that as well? Craft production?
Through this, exactly. I think through this, and during my visit, I will visit some of those outlets of craft, precisely to allow this unique and culturally rich craft that exists in India to find outlets, to find, I would say again, in the sense of matchmaking, opportunities to sell make in India, but also abroad. And I'm sure that there are European companies that are increasingly interested in India-made craft that is ethical, sustainable, and that is, I think, a quality that should not be underestimated, because it appeals to European consumers.
So just now the most important is the free trade agreement, because it would remove barriers, so to speak, and help both firms on either side to export more. And second, it would open up services and public procurement markets. Now let me come to the contentious, a few issues which are very contentious. That is the issue of Ukraine and the very unpleasant developments in Ukraine. All of us have been looking at this conflict and so much of escalation, and everybody has watched it helplessly. Now, for example, India had said that it had stepped in to ensure that Russia did not use nuclear weapons against Ukraine, and a little while later, the Russian head, Mr. Putin, said that he wouldn't hesitate to use nuclear force, and this comes on the back of this situation that NATO has virtually expanded to the Russian borders after Sweden. So, would you like to say something on this also?
I think first, this is really a tragedy, this war. And it is unprovoked, and you've got an aggressor, Russia, that invaded a neighbor country, claiming historical reasons for invading this country, using increasingly aggressive and belligerent rhetoric, including the threat of use of nuclear weapons. And this is, I think, a reason why so many countries around Europe are also realizing the potential, the consequential and existential nature of Russian threat. At the beginning, NATO was not on the border as you described.
Absolutely, yes.
But it's the very nature and the very acts of Putin's regime by invading a neighbor country that has created, because the countries, neighboring countries, want a security guarantee.
Absolutely.
They want to be protected.
Absolutely.
And I think that is the nature, but it is not the design. That is the result of the very acts by Russia. So, as Prime Minister Modi said in Samarkand, it's no time for war. And there is one very easy way to end the war, that Russia stops the war, pulls out. And I think this is what EU member states and European states have said all along, that we will do whatever it takes to ensure that Russia doesn't prevail, but Ukraine prevails, because they are fighting for their country, for their sovereignty, for their territory. And no one and nothing can take this away from them.
Okay. And then also there has been much talk on India buying Russian oil, and there has been such a debate worldwide. Would you like to say something on that issue?
The fact that India buys Russian oil is not the issue. The key issue is that the G7 countries and the EU have put in place a system of capping on oil sales by Russia. And the idea is to curtail the revenues that Russia gets from these oil sales, to limit their capacity to finance their war economy. This is the purpose of this capping. And it is a responsible action by the G7 and member states, because we didn't want to upset the global oil market. So if India buys Russian oil and has a very good discount from it, so be it. It will not be criticized for that. The importance is to ensure a capping on the revenues of Russia drawn from oil sales.
Okay. Ambassador Herve Delphin telling us that the relation between India and Russia on this issue of oil is there is no condemnation, there is no sanctions, but there is the issue of capping. So it really doesn't, that is the issue. And on the issue of nuclear weapons and on Ukraine escalation, of course, he has made his points clear, but essentially the prime focus of his visit to India is on to look for greater opportunities for India and Europe to cooperate. Thank you for joining us on this program.